Okay, so I chose the humor effect, and that's a cognitive bias that allows us to remember information when it's funny. When you laugh, blood pumps faster, and then the oxygen levels increase. And when we have higher oxygen levels, we're more aware. We instantly, like, that's just an instinct, is we just become more aware. So that, because when we're afraid, we need to pay attention so that we can fight back. So the humor effect shows right here the shortcut. Just because you smile, your body's telling your brain that everything's good and that you're getting your reward. And so that's like that's the mistake right there. Because you're skipping all this whole process that is very important. So it's almost like you're going straight to the outcome, and you're missing all the key information as to why you're supposed to remember the information in the first place. We have to go through the effort before we can enjoy the reward. Go through that effort to sacrifice, painful events and fear and failure, in order to gain like a bigger valued reward, and I think this is just the way life works, and it repeats like with each new goal that you set, with each new experience that you access, you go through that process and you come out with it with more value, more valued life. And the beauty of that is like the novelty that we can experience, the new pathways that we can unfold are quite interesting. New events cause new pathways to form in our brains. It's the reason why when we're children we remember, or our growth development is so critical when we're kids, because everything's new at that time, and so our brains are growing more than any other rate in our lives, so novel events are definitely good for you. There was an experiment where people were being asked, well, they would show this group of people a comedy show, and then they showed another group of people like a spiritual show, and so they found that then they had these groups do problem solving tasks, and they found like that the people who watched the comedy show were actually, they had like way higher scores than the people who watched the spiritual show. And it's pretty interesting, like, because what happens is comedy kind of puts us out of our own perspective, and it makes us see things a little bit differently. So it opens a new pathway with that novelty. That's something that also, like, a majority of the time it has to do with social. So it's something very like new to us. It's very uncertain. And is that there's this whole process of, setting goals, aiming for them. We either pass or we fail. If we fail, we just discover new pathways. If we pass, we discover new pathways because, well, we will repeat it. But what we need to also do for the sake of progression is we need to continue to keep discovering new ways to get to that reward, different ways to get to the same reward. So this process is important, and failure is also part of the process. But if you pass, you get the reward, you get memory lane, you get the truth, you get reality exposed. And with each experience that's consciously accessed, we are limited, so we need to understand what's important and what's not important in our world or in our lives, on a personal scale. When people received information from the EEG machine, it showed that everything was in photons. Everything was light energy before it was encoded to fit that person's perspective. So everything started off as just pure light energy, and then it got changed as with each perceiver in their own program, like in their own brain already, that so everyone had a different experience. And And so if it's all just light energy, you know, it makes you wonder, like, how does that encoding process work? But what the experiment was trying to explain was that, you know, everything is you know, almost like quantum level. And you know, what is reality if we're all seeing something different. So it really makes you wonder. And I think a cognitive bias is something that kind of shifts us in a different direction. Like, you know, we tend to see in our environment as something that's stable, but in reality it's actually very adaptable, just slowly adaptable. It slowly adapts, it changes, but it is growing, it's always changing. And with this environment that's not so stable, you know, we don't really know what reality is exactly, because what's true today might not be true in 1,000 years. What is relatable to the present tense? At the same time, like, there can always be change. So I think the cog bias is very interesting, how we start off like maybe afraid or nervous, and then when we laugh from like a joke, we literally like change our state, our physical state, because of the pumping and of the blood and the oxygen and the awareness levels, and that allows us to remember more, allows us to process more information at a time. So all that changes. And so I think the cog bias is an example that things are changeable. Like, even if we think something's like true or not true, well, there's always possibility. And or there's always, you know, time. When you put in time, it's like it may have been true back then or could be true in the future. So it just really depends on the timing. So definitely I think it has to do with evolution. Back then, like when, you know, humans were like cavemen, fear kept the species alive, because like that's what they used to get more energy, to run and to like get safe and to survive. And so as things are changing and then it's a new environment, you know, fear is actually doing the opposite, is it's slowly festering into stress, anxiety, worry, shock. There's like so many different types of fears that can just root and branch out, like, and then eventually cause stroke or heart attack. And so our own fear is actually killing us slowly. And joy is like, happiness is the way to let go of some fear, to laugh off something. And it could be fear, it could be anger, you know, any type of negative emotion basically. But and then there's the placebo effect too. That's like our own belief can actually change a situation. So you know, it makes you wonder where we stand when it comes to reality, and when it's changeable. You know, there's like art, and there's science, and there's all these different things that are kind of illusion. But at the same time, if we didn't have the illusion, what would reality be, just other than, you know, bland and like, there would be no added value. There would be no added value without the illusion. The illusion is the way that we find our play, like our mental play. And so our curiosity, and things are changeable. And so really, I mean, what's possible? I think that's the important question is. And so novel pathways are all about finding those possibilities. And then there's people who, you know, find pathways. They bring brand new things to this planet, like you know, like famous scientists and stuff. So that's novel right there. That's novel pathways. And I think that's the bigger point. The cog biases are trying to askew us, but not in that sense, more like the opposite. They're trying to guide us to this bigger consciousness and this bigger awareness. Because you know, the fact that we even have cog biases is already a first approach, because before we didn't even know cog biases existed, which just made us more ignorant. But now that we're aware, it's slowly shifting us into that direction, the correct direction. You know, just trying to bring awareness to that whole idea of how ignorant we could be, and how much our minds can play tricks on us, and how different our realities are from one another. to kind of like be more inviting or more like aware of everything we don't know. By kind of like adding in this unknown field, we need to also add in a positive feeling with that. And so humor is like the perfect way to add in the unknown and positive at the same time, rather than what our natural instinct of fear. We're afraid of the unknown. That's before, back then, it used to keep us alive. We were able to survive based on, this higher awareness of fear. However, fear is no longer like the main thing anymore.